Hey everybody, it's Kevin, Marina, and Lauren, and probably the most exciting show for me yet. I absolutely love these two. I got to visit with them in person in Cincinnati, family immediately with connecting with them, and they're doing some really incredible things throughout all pharmacy. So we're doing a combo show of adding these brilliant women and this guy together and looking at functional medicine and herbalism and how they're going to impact care. Uh, Join us for the next section of this episode to really dive into how do they integrate what's happening in the lives of Lauren and Marina, and we'll see you in just a second. How are you guys both doing? It's so good to see your faces. You don't even know how excited I am.
Amazing. I have missed being live on the RPH Ally platform for the past almost month. So I was in Costa Rica for a little bit, but you guys were all holding it down.
No, that's awesome. Costa Rica, like you've got to give us the insights on that. Marina and I did not get to join you on that super exciting trip, which I wish we did. Hopefully
Not
next
yet, but definitely in the future. I'm thinking we should have an RPH Ally retreat there in 2024 or 5. But yes, for those of you who don't know or maybe missed the memo, earlier this year I went to Blair Thielmeyer's retreat in Costa Rica at a place called Consmania. Spent 18 days there for back-to-back retreats and walked out actually becoming a part owner / board member of the collective. So I was back down there in August for another 18 days of retreats and came home and officially left my former employer. So I'm now fully employed as the CEO of FMPHA as my sole job at this point. So really excited for this next chapter and all the amazing things to come.
Oh, that's so cool, Lauren. I'm so happy for you. Marina, what's been new with you? I mean, we just got to talk a little bit last week, but it was a very short episode because you were crunched for time. Give me some more updates. You just did something with Tamar just the other day, which was a really cool kind of combo. We were talking about a product launch for you.
Yeah, congrats, Lauren, on all of your accomplishments and exciting updates and news. As for me, we've actually been dealing with some crazy illnesses and, inflammation and immunity issues with my kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and me and my husband, and it's like a whole mess. But hopefully, we're on the other end of things. And next week, I'm also preparing to go to a women's conference and retreat, and it's out in nature, campground style. And I'm going to be leading 2 workshops, one on the cosmology of the womb and the cycles and rhythms of our lives, and the second one on the Mayan abdominal self-care massage. So anybody local or willing to travel to Ithaca, New York, check out Spirit Kindred Gathering, and you can use the coupon code 15 now for 15% off.
Love it. That's super exciting. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the massage piece there. I mean, if I can segue like I love to do, I met a pharmacy technician in Brewster, like one of my favorite people on this earth. Eva, if you're listening, which I know you're not because you're super busy with 1,000 other things, but if you ever tune in, she was telling about her mom's like background growing up in southern Mexico and doing some very similar kind of traditional things, and how much it helped her as a young child and her children with getting over some gastritis, related issues, and just helping with peristalsis and lots of things that at one time, like before going into the medical world, seemed like, what are we doing here? What is this practice? And then recognizing, wow, it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a lot of traditional and indigenous practices are kind of like that, where they notice, observe things, know that it works, develop these practices. However, they learn from the plants, from the environment, from their own bodies. And science is like that too. It observes, but it wants to figure out how things are working. And I always see that science is catching up, right? We elucidate the mechanism after, but we could already see that something is working.
Lauren, did you have any, like growing up, were there any like family remedy or traditions inside your household or the Castle household that you pulled in?
Yeah, it's really funny actually, because when I think back to being a kid, my mom was super into herbal medicine and supplements, and we had a garden. And so, like, I vividly remember the smell of valerian root because she always had that in our medicine cabinet, and it stinks like so bad. And so, every time you'd open the cabinet, like, that was just what hit you in the face. But I remember taking echinacea when I was a kid for my immune system. I was sick a lot. Like I was constantly having like ear infections, sinus infections, eye infections, respiratory infections. And then I would get motion sickness a lot. So I was always on ginger as well. And yeah, like that is like one of my earliest memories of like being a kid. That, and then of course being on regular medicines as well, right? And having like my orange ibuprofen and like the pink antibiotics and like just being around medicine so much from like a really young age, I think is part of what kind of made pharmacy such an interesting career for me.
That's awesome. No, I love that so much. Yeah, as a kid, we had grandma who was Russian. We would do the Vicks vapor rub on the feet and then put socks over the top of those. That was always a big deal there for feeling like cooling down the body and feeling like you had some heat release. And it's amazing how effective that was. Interestingly, I'm sure it had a lot to do with someone that loved you that much rubbing on your feet just in general. Like that was probably the therapeutic benefit, if not a little bit more. Bee stings, like bee stings in the Walker household, where you went and grabbed mud or you spit in dirt and then put that on top of your bee sting to be able to pull that out. And then the Native American background, there are lots of things that we would pull in from, roots and remedies that I would hear from family members that they're utilizing inside of space. And then later on in my career, got to meet a lot of folks that were doing the garden planning and doing those in like Native American science spaces so they could leverage them in their own like universities and college settings, and then practitioners using those inside of their care settings. So that's really cool. I love hearing those stories. And honestly, like that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this show, because like that's the combination of functional medicine and herbalism, like trying to draw together like root cause analysis and leveraging roots to be able to help with those root causes, I think is a beautiful combo.
Yeah, it is. And, that's part of what Marina and I wanted to come on here today and do this sort of like joint episode, is because we recognize like there's so much synergy between the fields of functional medicine and herbalism. And we both get a lot of the same questions from people around like, how do we get started in this? Like, how do we know like what herbs and what supplements to use, right? Because like when you're getting into functional medicine, like, yes, there's the lifestyle component of it, but there's also so much that we don't learn about supplements and herbs and food as medicine and the interactions between all of these different things. And that's really where the type of work Marina does is so crucial and so important. And she is like the expert in the entire profession of pharmacy on this topic. And so we thought it would be really amazing to combine forces. And so Marina is going to be hosting a webinar for the functional medicine pharmacist membership community. And this is going to be taking place on September 13th at 7 p.m. So I'm super excited for this. You guys that were attending the RPH Ally soiree got a little bit of a sneak preview on some of the things we'll be discussing. But this is going to be a really amazing, intimate opportunity to learn directly from Marina. And her time is just so incredibly valuable. So I'm excited that we're going to have this opportunity to bring her into the membership for this first episode in really a series. We're going to be doing monthly clinical webinars on all the different topics that are relevant to functional medicine. So really excited for this. And yeah, early September 13th at 7 p.m.
Amazing.
Yes, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern time, yes.
Sure. Got it. Earlier for us on the West Coast. God, I know that I've got to take care of our folks on the East Coast, and the 9 p.m. bedtime for Dr. Castle down there is something I appreciate for sure.
Exactly.
Marina, so what kind of things are you going to be delving into during this kind of clinical walkthrough for the functional medicine folks?
Well, it's going to be along the same lines as we did at the soiree, like Lauren mentioned. It's really highlighting the importance of utilizing other modalities, including herbalism, in the fields of pharmacy and general medicine practice, and why there is a need, what gaps can be filled, how to approach it safely, effectively, and what can we do as pharmacists to gain these additional skills in a much more fast track way. And the reason is also going back to the roots, because pharmacy and herbalism do share the same roots. So we just kind of gave up some of our identity as an herbalist to become the modern pharmacist. But I believe there is a need and a desire that I see among us professionals to reintegrate. So that's what the discussion will be about.
I love that you used the word gave up, Marina, because I feel like if there's anything I've learned over this last year of connecting with pharmacists, like that's something that in general, like we feel like we've given things up, like of our level of professionalism. And we're starting to see some ripple effects of giving up to large corporate entities and what they've done with the profession of pharmacy. So for both of you guys, I mean, the one thing I would love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear, is really, why do we feel right now herbalism and functional medicine matter more for the pharmacy community than really ever before?
I love that question. And I've been sitting with that inquiry for the last month as I make my own career transitions and really consider that. I think that modern medicine and pharmacy and the way that the profession has evolved to scale, right, and try to maximize efficiency and automate things, like that is all necessary. Whether you want to call it a necessary evil is up to you. It's necessary because the scale of chronic illness has just blown out of proportion, right? Like we have so many people in America specifically, and sadly, increasing rates of chronic disease around the world, that there was no choice. There was no other way to be able to treat the volume of people that were stuck in the healthcare system and not getting any better.
Wow.
And so in the process of doing that, we've developed new medications, new drugs, all of these things, and yet people aren't actually getting better. Like it works for really acute scenarios. It works for people who are also at the end of their disease state because they wouldn't be able to survive without the systems and the medicine the way that it is today. And so on the one hand, it's great, but what we recognize from a functional medicine and herbal medicine approach really is that when the disease states are lifestyle driven, you can't just use medications alone and hope for the best. You have to combine the approaches, and that is what functional medicine does. It's not one or the other. It's taking patients where they're at, getting them on the right path for lifestyle changes that they need to make, and working sustainably to implement those and create a true transformation for them. And then also leveraging the modern medicines where we can and where we need to, but then also looking at herbal medicine as this sort of bridge, right? Because these herbal medicines and plant medicines are incredibly powerful and potent. And I'll let Marina share more on, the details of that. But, so many of our medicines today come from plants. The basis of them, the background of them come from the plant and animal kingdoms. And so there are benefits to being able to use these other modalities and therapies that you don't get from medications alone, particularly around side effect profiles, right? And synergistic effects. So it's important to be able to use all the different tools that we have available to help patients on their healing journey, and to make healthcare more affordable and accessible, right? Because the medications and the healthcare system and everything is extremely complex. It's extremely expensive. And yet I can walk outside my house right now and I have passion flower growing in my neighborhood that I can go pick and make a tea from to help with my anxiety. True story, right? So we have medicine all around us. And I think that's what the remembering really is, that we are our own medicine whenever we make the lifestyle changes and we work together with our environment to sustain a healthier life.
Well said.
Yes, I can attest to the passion flower because Lauren texted me a picture one day from her walk or run, and it was absolutely beautiful. And we say in herbalism that whenever you notice specific plants growing around you, those are probably your best allies that you can lean into because they show up when they're needed. So that passion flower probably knew Lauren needed some support and showed up for her. So I can't agree more. And I was just the other day doing the Pharmacist Business podcast that you can check out my episode, literally talking about these same things, that the sustainability piece is what's missing. The way that we have overburdened our healthcare system is just not sustainable. It's too expensive. We can't serve enough people and give them the resources because they're just not available for the amount of disease states that we're seeing. So all of these like specialty drugs and specialty pharmacies and these injectables and biologics and like all of them in the world, unfortunately, can't help us until we help ourselves with the sustainable and the resources and the lifestyle, which also involves us looking at the macrocosm and what is contributing to this global pollution and environmental changes that we're facing.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I think the things I like to do in pharmacy is really connect dots on business and technology in general. And so the dots that I usually see from a functional medicine standpoint are probably 3 or 4-fold. One is really this. If you look at the body of a sprinter, right? A high quality sprinter, massive legs and thighs and musculature in general, and they can power through a sprint with relative ease. If you ask them to be a long distance runner, they will never keep up with the body style of a slimmed down long distance runner. And that's what we're trying to do in healthcare today. Like we are trying to make a machine of acute care take care of chronic care, and it doesn't function. It doesn't work the way that we've currently built it. And that's where we're seeing so much burnout, that we have just a cycling door of acute care management of individuals that have chronic disease state needs in general. 2, when it comes to the build of this system, we're looking at RVUs, we're looking at FTEs, and we're looking at a system that was based on fee for service. So you do this, you make money on this. Well, unfortunately, I guess in some ways, we've seen that machine start to break because now we need more and more fee for service treatments for folks with chronic diseases because they're not getting better. And so now we're seeing a big push toward value-based care, particularly capitated rates. And so with those capitated rates, we're seeing more and more folks say, how can we take care of a population for less? Like, how can we do so, not less quality, but less initial focus on acute care management? And so it's a beautiful tie-in on why functional medicine and herbalism play such a massive role in the next step we're taking overall. I think the other pieces really for me are related to career. So when it comes to the satisfaction of us as professionals, as individuals that like to solve problems and help people, that's changing with one thing. The margins on medications have changed. So now getting more scripts out the door is more important than taking care of more patients at the counter. Like that shift has happened. The mail order service components are going into play. Cost plus is happening on a mail order level. And so now we're seeing that, what are we going to do as clinicians? Like, if AI and automation are taking all of these jobs away that, let's be honest, weren't creating a whole lot of value for our patients in the first place, where do we go to leverage our strengths or to broaden our strengths so we can truly help these populations and cultivate a way for pharmacy to once again stand out as the individuals that are caring for patients? I think we're finding the answers here inside of functional medicine and herbalism and combining them with lots of other specialties in the space. The last one I'll mention, there's a very massive decrease in trust of anything that has to do with westernized medicine. If it's a political issue, so be it. But in general, we are seeing a higher tick in individuals that are geriatric using more and more supplements and herbs than we've ever seen before. In fact, it's like a 25 to 30% increase. One of the reasons that that's probably likely is if you look at a lot of algorithmic medicine today, there's been studies that have shown if you have a chronic disease of diabetes and one respiratory illness, if you're just taking the medications that are algorithmically dedicated to you, you're taking probably nine medications that usually there are interactions and side effect profiles with each one of those. And so there's a lot of folks saying, this isn't working for me because I'm not getting better and I feel worse. And so I think that distrust is actually well placed from society, and they're just looking for a way for them to feel healthy. So there's my soapbox on the things that I've connected some dots on, and why I just love bringing these two together to kind of educate us on how do we make kind of that next shift. So Marina and Lauren, I know we're running up on time here, but tell me this, like, what are your guys' hopes on what we're going to be able to achieve together with this show for the pharmacy world?
I am just really excited for collaboration. That's sort of my focus right now in all aspects of what I'm doing professionally and personally, is finding ways to collaborate with others. Because I just think that whenever we have dialogue and we feed off of each other's energy and ideas and creativity, we can dream in these solutions, right? Like if we are all out there just trying to work in a silo, work by ourselves, create something all alone, oftentimes we miss out on the big picture, right? Like the puzzle. And so it's like when we all come together, when we bring our strengths to the table and we collaborate, we can go so much further. And I just love Marina. So
well, I love the both of you as well. And I completely agree. I think there's just so much synchronicity and synergy with all of these different groups of pharmacists that are trying to create shifts and movements. And I love that RPH Ally is bringing it all together and sharing and highlighting and showcasing all the different channels and educational opportunities and coachings that we all have to offer. But it's like we're all trying to do the same thing, right? We're all trying to achieve better patient outcomes, better career satisfaction. And part of what makes us love our career is when we see that our efforts are helping patients, saving lives, saving money. That's also a consideration. So I think bringing us all together and showing how every piece of our industry can have AI or, outsourcing things, that can be a benefit. So it can free up our time. So I don't think we should be threatened by evolution. I think we need to evolve. And sometimes it involves us looking to the history or going back to the drawing board and rethinking some of the things that has been accepted into standard of care.
Love that. Yeah. The only parting things for me are, if you haven't join RPH Ally. Great place to meet a lot of really brilliant minds that are out there. Totally free to join. You can join the conversation and become more involved. And I think what Marina and Lauren were saying is really just the whole inspiration to it is we need to have a collective body of pharmacists really trying to push the profession together, as opposed to in silos. And so that's really the entire point of us doing these things. One great way to get to know RPH Ally, to support RPH Ally and the things that we're doing, is go and grab your tickets and your recordings for the RPH Ally Soiree. We had right around 25 individuals that are thought leaders throughout the country based on their individual expertise and showcasing what you can do in pharmacy and things that you can learn in the space. And make sure you join both of these channels, both the herbalism and the functional medicine space, so that you guys can get to know these folks more and to be able to give your expertise on what we can do inside of both of those spaces. Marina, Lauren, any parting words?
Thank you all so much for tuning in, and more to come.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Have a great Labor Day weekend.